Wilson. Hello everyone. Let's talk a little bit more about the Tonfa. So this video is going to be specifically about striking and blocking. So the things that we do with open hand martial arts that we're now going to do with a weapon in our hands. And again, we've talked before about how the Tonfa is kind of an extension of your hand. So as you take a right front stance, you've got your guard up, you want to be aware of where your Tonfa is. You don't want these handles pointed towards your face or towards your head. So you want to kind of keep a good grip. You want to have your Tonfas well aligned along your forearms so that they're ready to block. And you want to have a strong grip to hold them where they are or be ready to put them out and pull them back. So the idea behind striking was what we're going to cover first. I mentioned it in the other video really quick, but it's just about the same as open hand or empty hand in that case. So if you're going to use your fist and you're going to do our normal punches, they work exactly the same. So if you're going to do an inward punch, you're going to do a round punch, you're going to do a vertical round, you're going to do an upward. What we don't have is, of course, the palm and the ridge hand strikes. But just regular striking, you can do them all with the Tonfa. And it's important that you get used to moving and keeping an eye where your hands are and where the handles are so that you don't get surprised should you try to block really quick and end up hurting yourself. So when you block, again, we're going to cover this in the blocking section in just a minute. But when you block, make sure you know where those handles are. So if I'm here and I want to block over here, I need to pull my head out of the way so I don't end up getting hit in the head with the handle. It's very important. So from a blocking standpoint, we have the normal blocks as well. We have an outward block, and of course you have the inward block. You have a lower block, so it's the same kind of concept that you're used to. That we're going to do regularly with the Tonfa as well. There's a couple other more specialized blocks, and we'll talk about those. We have one that's called a crane block, and this one's really important. It's really simple, but it's also kind of one of those things you can really catch yourself doing something that you're not aware of. So I'm going to try to scoot up. Hopefully you can still see my feet. I've got a really small space here. I'm trying to make the most of it. So if I'm going to do a crane block, it comes in two parts. Number one, my rear hand is going to go up in a high block or an overhead block. So I want to keep an eye where this handle is and make sure it's not going to hit me in the head. The second part, I'm going to lift my leg just like I was a crane. So I'm standing here. I'm going to bring my blocking hand down, and when I do, I'm going to strike and then bring it back up. So strike and back up. That's called a crane block. The idea is, if you're fighting someone with a bow staff especially, so you know if you've taken bow staff classes, as you strike up or down, you have the other end that you can use. So in this case, if somebody was to strike towards your foot, you could block that, but the other end of the bow staff is still available for them to bring back really quickly and try to strike up top. So the idea here is you protect your top, you strike to block at the bottom. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but that's something that you need to really kind of think about and work on. And we'll do a lot more of this when we're together as a group and we can practice these things. I want you to kind of practice those on your own. So then going back to striking, we're going to do the basic strikes. I want you to kind of spend some time with your stance, with your grip. So you got to keep a strong grip all the time on your Tonfa. You're going to practice your regular strikes. Make sure that you're putting your hip into those strikes just like you would if you had nothing in your hand. You're going to practice all of them. You're going to just kind of work through just like we would normally do in class. And I'm sure Master Wilson will give you a couple of warm-up classes before we have our meeting together at the end of March. But the idea is practice those strikes. Make sure that your offhand is somewhere that you can control. In other words, don't let this handle become someplace dangerous where you're going to hurt yourself. Turn your hand, put it to the side. You see what I'm doing? I turn my hand just a little bit and pull it back to the side so I don't get hit. Now, let's talk a little bit about what you can do that's a little bit different with Tonfas as far as striking is concerned. I showed you in the other video this concept of reaching out and striking and pulling it back. You need to practice that for temple, doesn't matter which hand. You want to do the jawline. You can even do the body. Just practice over and over again. Control. Make sure that you put the brakes on at the end. You can also use your arms to impact if you need to. But make sure you squeeze that grip. Just let it come out strong and come back. Use your brakes. You can also, with the Tonfa, you saw me do an upward strike. You can do that. The other thing you can do is upward this way. Okay? So you can come up if an opponent's a little bit far out. Let's say you wanted to come down, he blocked you. You could come up right after that. So there's an up, and there's also a down. You can also do an angular strike, just like we would do with a bow staff. So there's a lot of parallels, a lot of practical things that we teach with weapons that you can take from one weapon to another because they're simple and they work. So give it some thought where you can strike the knees, come down, just practice striking and stopping, striking and stopping. You want to be able to give elbows. You can still strike with elbows. All these things that we do open hand, if you're able to get your body under control and master those things, so once you get to a gold belt or beyond, something like that, where you feel comfortable with the basic techniques, then you can start pulling in what you've learned to a weapon as well. So the idea behind the strikes and blocks is to use what you've learned already and then add the Tonfa to it. There are some unique things about the Tonfa, as we mentioned. You can reach a little bit further. You can strike with both hands. You can still do the upward, but you also now have a hard elbow, so you can do elbow strikes. You can still do the same blocks. You just have to be careful of where that handle is. You switch hands, you want to make sure you're not going to get hit in the head. You can also do the inward blocks, same way you would do. Put the shoulder into it, either hand, whatever you need to do. Obviously, we would typically prefer the front hand, but if you needed to, for some reason, you have more flexibility, and with the Tonfa there, less chance of getting hurt. Lots of things to consider with the Tonfa. Practice the basics. So spend some time just in a right front stance, go through the punches. So you do an inward punch, front and rear. We'll do a round punch, a vertical round, an upward, and then switch your stance and do the same thing. Then we can also do a rear Tonfa strike. Then you can do it to the temple. You can do it to the neck. You can do it to the body. You can do it to the knees. Practice that. Get used to using this Tonfa. When we have our class together, we're going to go through the basics, but then we're going to go straight to how you would use them in a pattern. And I want you guys to have a little bit of time to think about what's involved with these weapons so that we're ready to move forward together. Again, if you have questions or you need to get a set of Tonfa, please talk to Master Wilson. If he can't answer your question, I'll be glad to try to help if I can. But get a set of Tonfa, start practicing, and let's make the most of this opportunity. Thanks for your attention. Pilsam.